Chapter 5, Lesson 8, Factor Linear Expressions. You will be able to use properties of mathematics to factor linear expressions. A monomial is a number, a variable, or a product of a number and one or more variables. Examples of monomials: 25x, 40x, 13xyz. These are all monomials, so numbers, variables, numbers, and variables. When the numbers and variables are together, it must be a product, which means multiplication. Things that are not monomials: x plus 4. There's addition, can't be a monomial. 3x minus 7. Subtraction, can't be a monomial. 12x plus 3y. Addition, can't be a monomial. To factor a number means to write it as a product of its factors. A monomial can be factored using the same method you would use to factor a number. The greatest common factor, or GCF, of two monomials is the greatest monomial that is a factor of both. When we are factoring, what we end up doing is the opposite or the reverse of the distributive property. So in the distributive property, you distribute a number into the parentheses. Well, with factoring, we take that number and put it outside the parentheses. So before we get into factoring, let's just find some simple GCFs of each of these monomials. So you have 4x. We can do this with factor trees. Once you get the hang of the factor trees, you'll be able to just do a lot of these in your head, which is perfectly fine. Okay? But let me show you where it's coming from. Let me give you a little bit of a meaning. So we have 4x and 12x. We're going to do factor trees. Well, the first thing I like to do is break apart the number and the variable. So we have 4 and x. Now, we can't do anything with x. It's by itself. There's only an exponent of 1. Okay, that's it. However, 4 I can break down into 2 times 2. So I'm going to bring down that x. 12x, I'm going to separate the number and the variable. 12 is 6 and 2. 6 is 2 and 3. Bring down the 2. Can't do anything with a singular x, so bring it down. So here are the factor trees. You need to find the factors that are in common. 2 is in common. Another 2 is in common. And x is in common. So the GCF is 2 times 2 times x, or 4x. Letter B, 18a can be broken down into 18 times a. 18 can be broken down into 6 and 3. 6 can be broken down into 2 and 3. Bring down that other 3, and a is by itself, so bring that down. Then we have 20ab, which is 20a, b. It's okay to have more than 2 branches up there to begin with. 20 is 10 and 2. 10 is 5 and 2. Bring down this 2. And a and b are just by themselves. There's nothing I can do with them, so bring them down. Find what's in common. They both have a 2 in common. They both have an a in common. And that's it. So the GCF is 2a. Letter C, we have 12CD, which can be broken down into 12 and C, and D. 12 is 6 and 2, and 6 is 2 and 3. Bring down the 2, bring down the C, bring down the D. To help yourself stay organized, it's a good idea to bring all those numbers and variables down. Then we have 36CD, which is 36, C, and D. 36 is 9 times 4. 9 is 3 times 3. 4 is 2 times 2. Bring down the C, bring down the D. Looks like they have a 2 in common, another 2 in common, a 3 in common, a C in common, and a D in common. Multiply these together. 2 times 2 is 4, times 3 is 12, so 12CD. That's the GCF. The next one, we have 12 and 28C. 12 is 6 and 2. 6 is 2 and 3. Bring down that 2. And then we have 28C, which can be broken down into 28 and C. 28 is 4 times 7, and 4 is 2 times 2. Bring down the 7, bring down the C. Here we have a 2 in common, another 2 in common, and that's it. So the GCF here is 4. $25X. Let's first break apart the number and the variable. 25 is 5 times 5, and then bring down the X. Then we have 15XY, which can be broken down into 15 times X times Y. 15 is 3 times 5. Bring down the X, bring down the Y. We have a 5 in common and an X in common, which is it. Therefore, our GCF is 5X. Letter F, 42MN. Let's break that apart. 42MN. 42 is 6 times 7. 6 is 2 times 3. Bring down the 7, bring down the M, bring down the N. And we have 14MN, which can be broken down into 14 times M times N. 14 is 7 and 2. Bring down the M, bring down the N. They each have a 2 in common, a 7 in common, an M in common, and an N in common. Multiply those together. 2 times 7 is 14, so 14MN is the GCF. Now on to factoring. You can use the distributive property and the work backward strategy to express a linear expression as a product of its factors. A linear expression is in factored form when it is expressed as the product of its factors. So if we were to factor 8x plus 4y, it would look like this. 4 times the quantity, 2x plus y. What we do is we find that GCF and pull it out. So let me show you. Again, I'm going to show you with factor trees. We have for letter A, we have 3x and 9. So let's look at 3x. Split apart your variable and your number. Well, they're both prime, so there's nothing I can do there. Then we have 9, which is 3 times 3. find what's in common. A 3 is in common, and that's it. So that's the GCF. And then I want you to take notice of what's left. We have an X left and a 3 left. Our GCF is 3. So that's what's going to be on the outside of our parentheses in our answer. Inside the parentheses, I'm going to bring down this plus sign, and I'm just going to write what's left. There is an X that's left in the first part, and there is a 3 that's left in the second part. And that's it. Let's do it again with B. We have 12x, which we can split apart to be 12 and x. And it's very important that you do it in order. If the 12x is written first, do the 12x first. Okay? 12 can then be broken down into 6 and 2. And 6 can be broken down into 2 and 3. Bring down the 2. Bring down the x. Then we have 7y, which is 7 times y, and that's it. Now they have nothing in common. But what they really have in common, technically, is 1. When there's nothing in common, no factors, they always have a factor of 1 in common. Okay? So this can actually be written like that, or you could write it 1 times 12x plus 7y, okay? Or sometimes you might see the term cannot be factored. So for this one, we're going to go with the answer cannot be factored. You didn't circle anything. There's no GCF other than 1, so we would just say cannot be factored. Letter C. We have 4x, and then we have 28. 4x, let's split it apart into 4 and x. 4 we can split apart into 2 and 2, and then bring down the x. 28, 4 times 7, and 4 is 2 times 2, bring down the 7. We have a 2 in common, and another 2 in common. That's it. So 4 is our GCF. Which means 4 goes on the outside of our parentheses. We're bringing down a negative sign. And we have x that's left with on this side. So x. And we have 7 that's left on the right side. So 7. Letter D. 3x can be broken apart into 3 and x. And 33y, 33 and y. However, 33 can be broken down into 11 and 3. And we'll bring down that y. Looks like we have a 3 in common. And that's it. So that's our GCF. So 3 goes on the outside of the parentheses. Carry down your plus sign. We have an x that's on the left. And we have 11 and y. And what we do with numbers when we have more than one of them is we multiply them. 11 times y is just 11y. Letter E. 4x is 4 times x. 4 is 2 times 2. Bring down the x. Then we have 35, which is 7 and 5. There are no common factors other than 1, so we can say cannot be factored. Letter F, 36x and 24. 36 is 9, or let's break apart the variable and the number. So 36 times x. 36 is 9 times 4. 9 is 3 and 3. 4 is 2 and 2. And bring down the x. 24 is 6 and 4. 6 is 2 and 3. 4 is 2 and 2. We have a 3 in common, a 2 in common, another 2 in common, and that's it. So our GCF, 3 times 2 is 6, times 2 is 12. And that goes on the outside of the parentheses. Bring down our plus sign. On the left-hand number, we have 3x left. And on the right-hand side, we have 2 left. The drawing of the garden at the right, which it does not appear to be here. So the drawing of the garden has a total area of 15x plus 8 square feet. Find all possible dimensions of the garden. Okay, so here's what we're going to do for this one. We don't really need a picture of the garden, but what we're going to do is factor. When we factor, we can actually get two numbers, two factors, okay, which is what we want. So 15x and 18. 15x will break apart into 15 and x. 15 is 3 and 5. Bring down the x. 18 is 9 and 2. 9 is 3 and 3. Bring down 2. 3 is common, and that's it. So 3 is our GCF. 3 goes on the outside of our parentheses. Bring down that plus sign. I have 5x left. And I have 3 and 2 left, which again, we multiply them. 3 times 2 is 6. So I have 6 left. Okay. So what we have here is 3 times 5x plus 6. So that would mean our dimensions are 3, and this is in feet, 3 feet. And this would be our second factor, 5x plus 6 feet.